From the troubled US relationship to the worrisome but newly revived relationship with China. You and I know which one is more important to this nation now and into the future, but too many others seem keen to suck up to China, the giant communist dictatorship, primarily for mercantile reasons, of course. But our security, regional security and global security hinge much more strongly on the United States. Not to mention the international rules-based order, the primacy of sovereign and democratic rights. They don't call the US president the leader of the free world for nothing. And of course, because of all that, we rely on the US for global prosperity and the continuation of our own economic development. It all works in tandem. In fact, the great irony of superpower rivalry at the moment is that China's economic rise could never have happened without the stability that the US presence in East Asia has delivered over the post-war period. Anyway, right on cue, former Prime Minister Scott Morrison has addressed a US congressional inquiry into the Chinese Communist Party, and he made his analysis very clear.
Rather than opening up their society during post-Cold War globalisation, the CCP used China's newly granted access to global trade, capital markets and legitimacy in international forums to build the economic, diplomatic, technological and military capacity to one day challenge the global order in an attempt to make it more favourable to their regime's security. That day is now.
Morrison explained that China's tariffs and trade bans on Australia were an effort to punish us during his prime ministership for daring to call for transparency on the COVID-19 pandemic. And he outlined how China had used the change of government to Albanese and Labor to reset the relationship.
This included abandoning their economic and diplomatic bullying and coercion for more inductive engagement, laced with charm and flattery. That said, the PRC still continues to engage in intimidatory behaviour by their military against Australia when it suits them without remorse.
The former PM's clear-eyed explanation there comes just as one of Australia's richest men has gone into print with gushing praise for China and the way Albanese has been embraced there. Andrew Twiggy Forrest is a multi-billionaire on the back of his iron ore exports to China, and where you and I might see a strategic threat, he sees a giant panda bear stuffed with cash. Forrest says he's worried we're trying to make an enemy of China, writing in The Australian that China has not just been a partner to me personally, but to the company I founded, Fortescue, and to Australia as a whole. He also made a big push for so-called green iron ore and green steel into the future. It's time for Australia and China to show the world, particularly my friends in North America, wrote Forrest, what is possible when respect triumphs over fear and when ambition for a world no longer reliant on fossil fuels triumphs over complacency. Wow, Twiggy and she saved the world, eh? Of course we don't want to ruin our relationship with China. We want and need the trade. But it's China that's bullied us economically and intimidated us militarily, and Forrest makes no attempt to explain that behaviour. We know what his motivations are likely to be, and good on him, he's a fine businessman. But running a country is not like running a business, and Morrison knows that. And he's told the US Congress that the Australia-US relationship is a crucial counterbalance to China in our region.
There are many lessons from our experience. Above all, I would highlight the need to never become casual about the potential threat and to remain vigilant. And in the same way that the CCP seeks to target our alliances and partnerships, these same relationships must form the core of our shared response.
Yeah, don't be casual, don't be complacent. Well said. These are difficult times and Albanese needs to manage both of these crucial relationships in the right fashion. So far, he looks like being an easy touch for Beijing, but an outsider in Washington.
261 days ago, the American people elected a new president. In that time, more than 30 world leaders have met with the US president. Why has the Australian Prime Minister failed to meet with the US President. The United States is our closest ally, and 261 days ago they elected a new president. Over that period, the Prime Minister has spent more time making excuses for unacceptable live firing exercises off Australia's coast than he has spent in person with the US President. Following the Prime Minister's recent overseas travels, has he had a conversation with the US President?
We'll continue to put the case, but we'll also, as I have to President Trump, but we will also do so in the full recognition that the America First policy and ideology, which has been promoted by the Trump administration, is clear. He regards, to quote President Trump, tariffs as the most beautiful word in the English language. We have a very different position and will continue to put it.
The answer to that question about whether or not he's had a conversation would seem to be no. And later, the Defence Minister was again defending China over its circumnavigation of our continent and the live firing exercises it conducted without warning.
And I'd be amazed if the opposition is actually suggesting this, who are asserting that the task group that came around Australia and in the vicinity of Australia earlier in the year were anywhere else other than in international waters. That is where they were. Now, if the Shadow Minister is suggesting that that must not occur again, I want to understand what standard is being promoted by those over there which would apply to Royal Australian Navy vessels when they are in the South China Sea and the East China Sea.
Dear, oh dear, that would seem to be an argument Beijing would make. Australia should say that open exercises with our allies in the South China Sea aimed at ensuring some of the world's most important and hotly contested shipping routes remain open are a world away from slipping into the Tasman Sea, the quiet waters between Australia and New Zealand, and getting into live firing exercises without warning, without letting us know. Chalk and cheese, but not to the Albanese government, apparently. The US is bound to be worried by Labor's apologetic attitude to China. Scott Morrison understands the dynamic as the architect of AUKUS, a deal aimed at curtailing any expansionist Chinese aims. Perhaps at least now, after Australia has thrown some US beef onto the barbie, Albo and Trump can get together. Maybe they could meet over a hearty Texas sirloin and thrash out some of the crucial trade and security issues our nations need to address. You never know.